Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I found this on 2 other forums, and apparently someone bought a drawer with a hidden compartment in the bottom drawer where there was some classified letter about an alien base under Esrange in Kiruna, Sweden. It ties to the Swedish phenomenon about ghost rockets, and there's also a video about the guy in the letter that they found dead. Also includes connections to Roswell and some material that I think Bill Schneider mentioned also. Lots of alleged UFO sightings around that area. Also there's the fact that LKAB Mining Company is actually moving the whole city of Kiruna due to mining. Let's discuss interesting old school GLP material right here, guys. Could all be a hoax, who knows? But still interesting. OCR of the letter will be pasted below in parts. Home of special significance to security of our country. Hello Per, congratulations on the new position. A feather in your cap to an already impressive career. It is especially gratifying that our paths, in a sense, now cross in service. Secret of special significance to the armed forces. This letter adorns the cover of a binder in which you will find very important information. It is with great trepidation that I hand this over. I am disobeying orders. I wish I could share this with you. There is one thing about Esrange that very few people know about. It's not something your predecessors knew about. But in your position, decisions may be made that have some bearing on our operation. Now it's so convenient that you got the job. I could never tell this to anyone else, so maybe it's written in the stars. Either way, it's necessary. You are now in some ways my boss, but also a close friend. I trust you know the importance of confidentiality when it comes to this information. If this information were leaked, it would put me and others in grave danger. I insist that you burn this letter after you have read it. I'll take it from the beginning. Everything you know about my work out at Esrange is untrue. I do work at Esrange, but not with sounding rockets. Esrange and the Space Corporation are a cover to hide a colony of beings from another star system. My job is to try to find out and replicate its technology. I am part of a small team of 23 people. Would they have gone faster with more? No doubt, but the larger the team, the greater the risk of information leakage. The colony has been on the site long before Esrange was there. As far as we know, they arrived in the autumn of 1946 after sending a large number of probes. By then, they had been traveling for many hundreds of years, studying the unprecedented evolution of human technology. They probably never entered orbit, but arrived directly in a hyperbolic orbit, braking just above the atmosphere. This was done to minimize their impact. But this required them to send a large number of probes in advance to find a suitable location for arrival. Probes that witnesses in the 1930s and 1940s noted but didn't realize what they were at the time. We called them ghost flyers and later ghost rockets. The arrival of the colony itself completely passed us by when it happened. In the years before the arrival, the number of probes increased markedly, peaking in August 1946, and then ebbed away completely after they landed in the autumn of 1946. On this basis, on the 10th of July 1946, the Ministry of Defense formed an investigation committee which was to be called the Ghost Rocket Squadron. The official name is the Defense Staff's Rönnberg. The committee includes representatives from the Defense Staff, the Air Administration, the Air Staff, the Defense Research Establishment, the Defense Radio Establishment, and the Naval Administration. The Defense Staff's Air Defense Department was responsible for collecting reports from the public and the military. The technical analyses were primarily carried out by staff from the Air Administration. The chairman of the committee was Colonel Bengt Jacobsen, head of the Air Administration's Material Department. On the 19th of July, several witnesses saw probes hitting 4 lakes in Norrland. The lakes are investigated by the MR-Sverige, but all they find are craters on the bottom, no wreckage. We believe that they landed the probes in the lakes intentionally, but more on this later. On July 22, 1946, the Defense Staff, through TT, urged newspapers not to put place names in their notices. The reason is that the public and foreign powers should not receive any information about the movement of the space probes over Sweden. On August 14, 1946, this gets international attention when the New York Times reports that U.S. Secretary of State Dean Acheson was very interested in the testimony of the spy rockets over Scandinavia, and on August 20th, 2 experts in aerial warfare from the U.S. land in Stockholm, General Jimmy Doolittle and General David Samoff. In 1947, when one of these craft crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, a secret organization called Group Zero was formed on the initiative of Harry Truman. Harry Truman was reportedly frustrated by the problems of filing through the conservative-controlled Congress. He did not trust that politically and democratically controlled processes could handle an event such as an alien craft with the secrecy it required. The letter required something more stable than a democratic nation, which might be one presidential election away from changing everything. Therefore, the handling of the Roswell rocket was taken away from the military and given to the group, which consisted of some of the military personnel involved in Roswell, members of the Swedish Space Projects Committee, and some multinational corporate executives with a lot of resources. Group S1's aim was to research the alien technology from the ship and slowly leak the findings secretly to humanity through their companies. And if possible, discover if there were more ships and keep them secret so that they could fully control the flow of technology. But 15 years later, the purpose changed slightly. The year was 1962. Astronaut Jahan Glenn had just completed 3 orbits of the Earth, and shortly afterwards the American satellite Telstar was launched. This is the first privately funded launch and the first satellite not owned by a government. Officially, this is a communications satellite, but behind it was Group S1 on board. In addition to communications satellite equipment, it has systems to scan the Earth for radio signals to match those that the Roswell probe appeared to be using. An interesting anecdote is that 1962 is the year in which the Soviet Union repeatedly opened fire on unidentified flying vehicles high in the atmosphere over the Arctic Ocean. The objects were heading both towards and away from the Scandinavian peninsula. But we in Group S2 didn't know this when it happened. We only found out in 1983 from a Soviet infiltrator named Mark Trum. It wasn't long before it had picked up a signal from a deserted area in northernmost Sweden, about 25 kilometers northeast of the small village of Czech. This prompted S2 to act very quickly. With the help of a discreet lobbying campaign, they got Sweden's parliament to pass a law against pirate radio broadcasts that same year, the real reason being to better triangulate the signal without interfering with pirate stations in the area. An agreement was signed in the same year to set up the European Space Research Organization. This would come into force 2 years later, in 1964. The first thing the European Space Research Organization did was to set up a fenced area around the newly found site. The area was given the internal name Extraterrestrial Stationary Radio Anomaly North, Ground Elevation. During construction, a cover was developed. The SONA is still the official explanation of the base's purpose to this day. However, the idea of a huge civilian space base on Swedish Snark, with guards and fences, run entirely by a newly established international organization risks raising uncomfortable questions. To make the base's creation and existence a little less conspicuous, ownership was taken over in 1972 by the newly formed Swedish company Rönnberg. In the years after 1964, several energy signals were mapped in the area, all concentrated in an area about 470 meters below the Earth's surface. Once the depth and position were established, blasting began underground. The explosive rock that was brought up formed a stone and gravel plateau of about 26 hectares. The official explanation for this one-note plateau is that it is there to send up weather balloons, which it does, mainly to maintain the cover. Many of the people who work with rockets and balloons at Esrange. I don't know the real purpose and what is going on under their feet. The colony itself is circular and shaped like a discus with a diameter of 33-41 meters. It is centered between the Skadavara and Potavara mountains in what is known as Zona of the Esrange area. It has a hard hull that lies directly against the primeval mountain with a perfect fit. There are no significant natural voids between the colony's hull and bedrock, nor are there any passages to the surface, except for the one we blew up to get down. The hull is mostly non-metallic, but there are exceptions. The central part is a 250-meter wide slightly raised triangle on top of the colony, which is covered by a jumble of circular patterns of different sizes and of different metal alloys that give it different colors. Our tunnels start with a long tunnel that slopes about 10 degrees down towards the center of the colony, at 450 meters depth straight up. In the center of the colony we had our heads with offices, labs, toilets, and a coffee room, the hair base we called the center. Right below the central area we carved out a cavity between the hull and the rock where we can explore the hull. It has a high ceiling and is called the church. From the church, the tunnels branch out into 12 tunnels along the hull in all directions of varying lengths, 4 of which reach the edges and 1 of which goes down a bit below the colony and is meant to follow it all the way to the underside center. Meaning that the tunnel has some way to go before it is completed. The lack of passage up was a great mystery to us at first, for we could observe their probes over the area off and on. And there they could send up and take home these without passage through the primeval mountain. The answer came after an incident in June 1979 that cost the life of a dear colleague, or it happened already in January 1979 or August 1980, depending on how you look at it. It began when my colleague and friend James was found in June by police, frozen to death a few miles from base. The odd thing was that he wasn't dead, not yet. The body found, but my colleague was very much alive and working as usual. But the body was like an exact copy of him. Except it was missing a sliver front tooth, same clothes and everything. It even had a copy of our coffee pot from the coffee room. The police were puzzled because no one was reported missing, and he wasn't dressed for the wilderness, and certainly not for cold weather. And how did he get out there? There were no roads. The police didn't know that it looked like a copy of James, and when no one was reported missing, they buried the body at Czech Cemetery with the name unknown. We were also puzzled, and although it was all very eerie and uncomfortable, we had no theories at the time about what had happened, or rather, what was going to happen, but we worked on as usual. Until August 1980 when it happened. We observed a correlation between seismograph disturbances and craft over the Esrange area. But they were delayed 575 days. So if we saw 3 craft leaving the area 2 days apart, we could record 3 seismic events 2 days apart 575 days later. When we found this pattern, we saw our chance to figure out how they were sending them up. We noticed early on that they seemed aware of our working hours, and the previous seismic disturbances had taken place when as few of us as possible were on site. So they knew we were there and they were keeping an eye on us. But this time we had an idea of when it would happen next, so we decided to sleep down at the center and we were awake when our newfound 575-day rule theoretically. We had placed measuring instruments all over the parts of the hull we could access, measuring everything from radioactivity to electromagnetism, sound waves, and gravity. All the sensors were connected to the control center where we sat and monitored everything. After this realization, we moved to the center. We blasted out a cavity further up the tunnel so that they are not directly above the triangular part to avoid more incidents of this kind. We also erected a 100 meters high mast directly above the triangle with 11 evenly spaced measuring points. This mast is thus exactly above the center of the colony. So how do their probes work? Why do they always land in lakes? And how did they escape someone finding parts of them for so long, and why were we able to find it in New Mexico? It has to do with the alloy they're made of. We've named it alkaline but also call it interstellite, a working name that stuck. Interstellite is an alloy of group 1 and 2 metals in the periodic table. Alkaline metals, hence the name alkalium, and reacts very strongly with water. However, they can actively keep it from reacting, presumably by applying a high voltage to the probe's hull. This has the advantage that if a probe stops working and crashes in the desert somewhere, it will just lie there until the first rainstorm passes by and erases all traces. It also seems to be why they prefer to land the probes in lakes at the end of their missions. They react with water and all traces are erased. Now, along with the documents that accompany this binder, you know everything you need to know. More than this, one I don't know. To your future decisions in the service, this information will serve you well. I hope we can see each other again soon. It has been far too long since the last time. Your friend Carl. Links to the video mentioned and the images of the documents are in the description.
I live in a tiny village in Central Europe, maybe about 40 people here, plus a police station with 2 cops. Pretty nice place. I bought a house here for a steal considering the size of it. When I moved in, some of the locals told me to not go out after dark. I figured whatever at first. A lot of these small towns and villages have some strange customs, and since I never was partial to night walks, I didn't think much of it. Life went on as normal for the most part. Weird forest noises at night, but I lived in cities all my life, so figured it was normal, if a little off-putting. Then I made the mistake of opening up the spare room as a room for travelers. Usually hikers would pass through, and I thought it would be a good idea to make some money. My first guests were a young couple, and they told me about their plan to hike out into the woods and would come back at night. I jokingly reminded them of the locals' warning. They never came back. The weird thing was the local police, after hearing me tell them of their plans, they just sigh as if it was a common occurrence. This got me interested, and I have spent the last few months conducting research. This town has a serious problem. I can't explain it better than there are these things in the forest. And they enter the town once it is dark, usually about 20 minutes after it's gotten really dark. The locals just call them or they. But after my studies, I've identified 3 different types and have a theory on a 4th type. They seem to come out of the forest and look for food, or maybe just to hunt down people who have the misfortune to be outside of their homes. I don't know their motivations, whether they eat those they take, or worse. They seem to be unwilling, or unable to enter people's homes. At least, they don't crash in through the windows or break down doors, but they will enter if a door is left open, and such. The first type I noticed, I call the Lurkers. They are like moving shadows, skulking around the streets at night. They would appear to be much like a worker ant. They are around 4 feet high, slender frames, and bony limbs. I've tried flashing them with a flashlight in order to get a better look at them, but it's as if the light just stops at them. Lurkers seem to scout out targets for collection. After distressingly observing what happens when you get stuck outside, they seem to surround their prey and make noises which summons the next one. The second type of bastard is what I've called teeth takers. They are the true danger. Once summoned, they will emerge from wherever they are hiding and move towards the group of lurkers and take the prey. Much like the other, they seem to just block light. However, after attempting to capture a lurker for study, I ended up attracting a tooth taker. It took a lot of effort to take it down, but they seem almost allergic to strong light. I assume this is a trait common to all of them. I performed a somewhat unorganized autopsy on the bastard. They are about 5 feet 5, more muscular than the lurkers, and their heads seem to be all mouth. It opens up like a flower. More disturbing is that their teeth look like human teeth haphazardly arranged inside the jaws. A friend of mine pulled a few of its teeth and sent them off to be examined. Apparently they came from different people, hence the name teeth takers. The third type I've only seen once. They very much stay at the edge of the forest. These things are huge, built like bears. They don't venture into the town, but they are usually the first to appear. I've likened them to guard dogs. They are seemingly only there to prevent anyone stuck in the woods from getting out and examining what teeth takers bring back. Other than that, I really am hesitant to get any closer. I have no idea if there even is a fourth type, but all the behavior I've witnessed seems to me to suggest either a rulership caste or some sort of queen figure that assists them with pheromones or breeding. Teeth takers will refuse to let go of their prey unless killed. Lurkers will scram as soon as a bright lamp or light is shone on them, but will quickly return as if nothing happened. They do not appear to be very smart, but there is a strange smell first thing in the morning, which suggests that they use pheromones to mark places of interest.
Put out some trail cams. If these things are too smart for technology, then do something low-tech like spreading sand around to catch footprints.
They surround my house since I killed a tooth taker. I'm guessing the lurkers are doing that to prevent any more meeting the same end. I planted its head on my fence, but the sunlight caused it to disintegrate. But the message was seemingly understood. Or they are planning something. Not sure at this junction, but I make damn sure everything is locked at evening time, and no windows left even slightly open.
Be me. Work out a dock. Work the night shift. Despite being in a region known for its crime, the dock gets pretty quiet at night. My job is to basically just watch cameras, do patrols, and shoo away teens who come down to the docks to smoke weed and etc. Boring as fuck, but it pays kinda good for where I live. Be working the graveyard shift. Basically, nothing happens during these shifts because it's the middle of the fucking night. About to fall asleep due to how fucking boring it is. Hear footsteps. Don't give a shit because it's probably one of the other guards or one of the workers. Hear footsteps fade away into the distance. Remember that I'm supposed to be alone in this part of the dock, and that if anyone had entered the area, they would have called it in on the radio. Fuck that MP4. Open office door and look around. See a tall silhouette at the end of the walkway. It's just looking at me. Turns and walks around the corner. Remember that I'm not a fucking baby, and that this is the only job I could find in months. Go charging after the silhouette. Round corner. Dead end. What? Literally the only way the person could have vanished like that is if they jumped off the railings and into the stormy sea below. My face when this area is known for drownings due to how aggressive and deep the sea is. My face when I would have heard them impact the water. My face when this isn't the first or last time this has happened to me. Shit like this happens so fucking often that I've considered leaving, but it's the only job that'll accept me in the local area because my dad is friends with the owner.
Holy shit X. So bear with me. This happened a few minutes ago. So I'm still very spooked. And I'm writing this from my cistern. I was studying some shit for uni, and very often I go out on a walk on my property. I live in a bigger village. You can call it a small town, but people have land for agriculture and stuff. My property is pretty big and it's on the base of a mountain. At the top property I have a cistern for water. It's empty, so when it's very cold I go inside. I have some old pillows and I lay down or sit and smoke. On top of the cistern you can see a very pretty view of the city. Anyway, I'm putting on my coat and get my cigs and I tell my older brother I'm going on a walk. I go out on walks often, so it's nothing unusual. I asked him wanna go out with me. He says he wants to watch a movie, so maybe tomorrow. I leave the house, light a ciggy and start climbing up. From my house to the top of my property is like 500 meters. I go on top of the cistern admiring the view, but it's fucking cold, so I don't want to hurt myself climbing down in the cistern with a ciggy in my hand. So I want to finish it and go inside. Keep in mind I went 100 times on these walks and nothing happened. So I'm almost finished with my ciggy. It's very calm, but then I hear footsteps, human-like but kinda weird. I'm already in a fight or flight mode and I turn my head to the sound of the footsteps and it's coming from above my property, opposite of my house. Then I hear a voice, it's my bro. It's something wrong with it. I can only see a figure cause I was on my phone and my eyes need to adjust. I'm kinda creeped out already. He stands there for a minute, then he says get down. My eyes adjust to the dark and I realize this is not my brother. It's some weird creature, I can't tell its details because it's dark, but its body is fucking weird. Then it screams, I throw my ciggy and fucking jump inside the cistern, almost breaking my ankle. Closing the hatch. And I can hear this thing screaming and bashing and the side of the cistern, I almost shit myself. And after a few minutes it stops. I'm still fucking spooked to go out. I wanted to call my dad to get his gun, but he will think I'm a wuss. I'm still in the cistern shitting my pants and I don't know if the thing is gone. Did I fucking encounter a European Skinwalker?
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.